Hey guys, it's Ruben, and today I'm going to be doing something that it's taken me I think over a year to do and to figure out. I have a huge amount of gratitude towards my team that has taught me and that has been there by my side, learning together on how to record a business podcast. We started making a lot of mistakes, and we've evolved the process. We've optimized it. We've kind of figured out what works and what doesn't. And today I have Dustin, and Dustin and I have had some great conversations. And one of the things that I'd love to evangelize is this effort, since I'm kind of proud of it. So thank you so much, Dustin, for being here.
Yes, Ruben. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and the first thing that I always like to think about when starting a podcast is, what is the ultimate mission? What is the why behind that? What are we trying to accomplish, right? It's one thing to express ourselves, to journal and to sort of document our lives, but it's also another thing to build something into a larger brand that serves a larger mission. So what I might ask you to think about is, what is the brand? What is the mission? Who is the target audience for the podcast? These are not things that you need to know now, but I would just encourage you to think about some of these things. The other thing that I would say is, most podcasts don't continue. They drop, they stop. Okay. It's that rule where 80-90% of the people give up. And the reason why that happens, I think, is a couple of things. Number one is there's no monetization strategy, right? It takes away from a business process, keeping the lights on, paying the bills. It takes away from that. And that's the number one thing that I would always encourage people to think about and to get ahead of. Because if you are 3 episodes in and you realize that, hey, you know what? This is taking away from my work and it's hurting me, it's not going to scale. You need to stop that immediately. So in an effort to get ahead of that, what I always recommend is to integrate the monetization strategy into the overall plan. It could be short term, it could be medium term, it could be long term, it could be more of a brand play, personal branding. It's just a very important thing that we're all thinking about on LinkedIn as employees of companies, but also as individuals.
Yeah.
So, any specific questions about any of those? Anything you kind of want to workshop?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is really to identify my why behind this. I think I can vaguely say it. It's to connect with people and connect with this idea around therapy farming, or what it is to have a therapy farm. But the main mission behind it is I want to see people heal and then see our lands healed simultaneously along with that. But how to actually deliver that in a concise way that makes sense, that grabs people's attention, and it just doesn't kind of go by the wayside of like, oh yeah, that seems like a good idea, but well, now what? Like, what do we do with that? So I really want to connect with people on a heart level and first bring awareness to what is, and then speak to the dream of what could be.
Mm. Yeah, that's an amazing vision, and I love that. The way that I think about the branding of a business podcast is, I have my business plan here.
Yeah.
I have my go-to market strategy here, and then I have my podcast strategy here. And part of that business plan or marketing plan might be to find partners, to find co-founders, to find investors, to find customers, to find members of the press, to find all those people that eventually you're gonna need to make all this possible, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, the easiest path to success, where you actually sustain this, is to get the people on your business strategy, on your go-to market strategy, to be the same people on your podcast schedule. Okay? The reason why this is valuable, most of the reasons are obvious for this, because you're building a relationship with folks, you're getting ahead of a problem that you're going to face.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you're learning, and as you develop your strategy for your business, your vision, whatever you want to bring to life, you're pivoting that in real time. The hardest thing to do for a startup, for something new, is to raise money, for most of us at least. It's very challenging to raise money. the people that fund businesses are sometimes the best people to get the feedback from, right? And the reason why that's the case is because chances are they're successful if they're an investor, unless they inherited money or they won the lottery. They have a high perspective. They see the 10,000-foot view, and they can provide information that's valuable. Now, I don't want to aggrandize them too much because there's folks that are doing the grit and that are selling it and that have this blood, sweat, and tears. But at the same time, getting to some of those hard to reach people is so much easier when you do it in an environment like a podcast versus hey, I wanted to pick your brain. Hey, I wanted to see if you could give me some free time.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as free time. The more successful and seasoned a person is, it goes without saying, the more expensive their time is, and people value that, just like as we all do and we all should. So a podcast affords certain opportunities. It gets certain people into our mix, so that when we need a favor, when we need information, we've got it there directly in front of us.
Yeah, for sure.
So, as you develop your business strategy, as you develop that, whatever that may be, I encourage you to think of the top types of people that you want to connect to, and then top 20 to 30, specific individuals that within your network or that you can get introductions to. So that's, I think, the first thing.
No, go ahead. I'm tracking with you. I'm just listening very closely.
Yeah. And, I think that when I talk about monetization strategy, a lot of people don't think about that when they think about a podcast. And, there might be something a little disfavorable about that, or something that might be unsavory about that. But the reality is that our time is valuable. And there is a way to have a podcast monetize an effort while at the same time providing massive amounts of value to the listeners, to the guest, to ourselves. It's a total win-win-win. And I can say this 180 episodes later, where I've done this many times. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm still a student at this. I'm growing. It's a small podcast with a modest audience, but it's been phenomenal what I've been able to do and the relationships that I've been able to build and the things that I've learned. So, I think that sort of covers the why, the kind of how to kickstart this thing, some of the branding. I think the next thing that I think is really critical here is talking about the coordination, right? So we know what the title of the podcast is. That's one of the things that we always talk about in branding. We know who our target guest is. We have a hit list of maybe 10 to 20 folks that we can activate this with. We know who our audience might be. Truth be told, the audience of a podcast in the beginning is your close knit of people. If someone is trying to get a large audience in the beginning, it's going to be disappointment. The goal is just the relationship building for your first 100 episodes, give or take. Just focus. But
there's really high expectations you need to manage and manage them well.
If you could be okay with having an audience of 2 to 5 people for the first, X number of episodes, you'll do much better. So coordination. So one of the things that I do to coordinate podcasts is I have a booking link. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So this is my podcast booking page. Okay. It's a Dubb video. And what I have in this is I have my podcast pitch, and then I have a direct integration to my calendar. Okay. So what I do when I find someone that is a good prospect to be on the podcast, in the beginning, I was doing this myself, and now I've just delegated it to someone on my team. Actually, her name is Naomi. Naomi, if you're listening, huge gratitude for helping me with this effort. I really appreciate it. You've done so much for me, so thank you so much. What Naomi does for me is that she'll find a prospect based on certain criteria. Are they an influential person? Are they a business leader? Are they a prospect for the business? Are they someone where people need to hear what they have to say? That's sort of our loose prospecting list. But what she'll do is she'll send an email to them, and she'll also send a LinkedIn message. Okay, that LinkedIn message will have this video in it using Dubb, and then it'll have a direct time to book the time in my calendar. Now, the hard part here is to get someone sold on a young podcast. Because if you have a young podcast and there's no other guests that have been on this podcast, it's the chicken and the egg problem. No one wants to be the first person, right?
Right.
So it's important to pick out someone that is sold on you, not sold on your audience. What I know people do is they click on this button and then they go and they look on the podcast, in this case on Apple, and they see that the podcast is seasoned. There's 153 episodes. It goes on and on. It's been around for over a year now. There's some nice ratings. Ratings is another thing that we're going to talk about and why it's so important, and so on and so forth. So once they're sold on the podcast, which of course video does such a phenomenal job with, then they're going to book a time. We shall not assume that people will automatically book a time in our calendar. Not going to happen. They need to be sold on this, right? As many people in business say, especially people in sales makes the world go round, or at least the business world. So once they book a time in this calendar, then what happens is they go to this form, okay? Full name, email address. Have you created an account on Dubb? Now, there's two reasons why we do this. Number one is because we use Dubb as a platform to share micro clips from the podcast. The second reason is because this is our monetization strategy. We want people to check out Dubb. We want to sell our software platform. And when people see the value of it, the light bulb goes off and they say, you know what, I should be using this for my sales effort. I should be using this to get people on my podcast. I should be doing this to coordinate my meetings or to prospect or to just nurture my existing clients. The neuron fires and it monetizes the same thing. In fact, I'm very proud to say this and very transparent that we've had dozens of people that have been on the podcast that have become paid subscribers of Dubb. I'm very transparent about that. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, and I'm likely to become one. I've played around with it thus far. I haven't dedicated all the time I wanted to it, but I'm likely to get on board with you guys. I like what you're doing.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
This form needs to be customized. Okay, we need to get into our calendar booking page. We can use Calendly. We can use Acuity Scheduler, scheduler, I think, or Acuity Calendar. Book Like a Boss. HubSpot has one. Schedule Once. There's 6 or 7 of these calendar programs, all of which work with Dubb, which we need to just use for our booking. We should not coordinate the booking times through emails. Are you available on Tuesday at 6 a.m.? No, I'm not. Let's do 10 a.m. No, I can't. I have a doctor's appointment. That back and forth is extremely inefficient. We need to automate that scheduling and coordination process. The other thing that we need to do is we need to add custom fields to it. Okay, so the custom fields that I've added on my form are: what are your favorite topics to discuss? Proposed title of the podcast. I actually let people title the podcast, and 98% of the time, I stick with that title. And I'm going to explain why I do that in a minute. Their Twitter account. Please provide high volume niche hashtags we can use to drive more traffic to the podcast. For example, LinkedIn, small business, etc. Email address that you're gonna create your free Dubb account on. A cell phone number for text reminders, because we want to avoid flake rates. We want to get this into the Google Calendar. We want to have text message updates. These types of things are going to avoid flaking, which we just don't want. And then, of course, they fill out that form and they book it. Now, once this activates, what happens is, in this case, Naomi from my team, what she does is she, first of all, the poster of this gets an email notification that's fully automated that says, please meet at this time. Here's some prerequisites. Here's the proposed title, so on and so forth. But then what we also do in addition to that is Naomi from my team, she actually creates something in our calendar, in my calendar, and she invites the guest, okay? And she puts all of the information in there, and then she actually adds some other things, like please be prepared, please have good audio, please make sure that your video is good. This is a video podcast. And then, of course, she adds the StreamYard link. StreamYard is a platform that we use to go live on the podcast, okay? And I'm going to explain why we go live in just a bit, okay? So let's jump back to here to direct. Now, that was a lot of information. I wanted to see if you had any specific questions, comments, concerns about that.
Nothing comes to mind right off the bat. I'm just trying to digest everything you're saying and pay close attention. But I'm gonna have to go back and try it myself to re-implement it, or go back and watch this video we're doing together. But that's all very helpful. I mean, it's the practical stuff that myself, as a 50,000 foot above dreamer of what something could be, I don't take into account every day. I'd love to have a Naomi like you have to help systemize all that and put it together. So, but for the time being, I'm gonna have to learn to do it on my own.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's spend a little bit more time on coordination. We use Asana for our project management. And
why did you choose that over something else?
I like Asana because I like the flexibility of it. They have a great free plan, in fact. The alternatives to Asana would be Monday.com, Basecamp. There's a lot of these now. If you type project management software, there's a lot of them. We chose Asana. I would say that they're all pretty comparable. There's two ways to manage a product board. Trello is another one that you will hear. The first one is
Trello.
Yeah. You'll see a list. I don't really care for a list. I like a board. This comes from the Japanese Kanban board. And there's a great episode of Silicon Valley, the show HBO, where it shows the developers doing a Kanban, and it's sort of a competition where they're taking all the features and they're putting it to do, and they're putting in work in progress and then completed. And it's kind of a visual story where two developers are competing against them. And I find it really amusing. But what it really does is it shows the value of visual project management, because there is something so satisfying about moving this card down to sent invite. And I'm specifically going to show what my custom board looks like. Yeah. So invites, these are the folks that we're inviting. This all started in an Excel spreadsheet, right? Start in an Excel spreadsheet and then end up here once you're ready. I wouldn't suggest that you go here directly. Get yourself a little bit comfortable.
Okay.
Sent invite. For follow-up, sometimes people don't respond. We have to follow up a couple of times. Waiting for a reply. Guesting. No go. These are rejects, people that are not interested. Maybe they're too busy, or they're just not feeling it. To do, here's some activities here. Here's some progress, which is social posting, and then done. We've recorded the video. We've posted it on social media. We've cut it into micro clips, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. That's in the distribution realm. So this effort is a very manual but also automated effort, and it feels really good to have the process so that we can visually watch the system moving from one piece to the next. Okay.
And it feels much less anxiety inducing too. Like if you go back to the list and all you see is a list of hundreds or thousands of people's names or businesses and notes, it's too much. Your brain wants to short circuit and think, how in the world can I get all this accomplished today? But I like this layout. It's a nice user interface.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show a specific task. I'm going to find a nice baked up one. So in this case, what we've done is, there's not a lot of details in here, just because I think as you mature more with these tasks, since everything is known and trained, that we don't need to put all the micro tasks in here. So I think the purpose of this agenda that I have here is to really go through the micro tasks. This is really a lot of those tasks that might exist in the Asana. So let's keep moving here. Prospecting guests, booking times, meeting platforms. I think it's important to jump into this meeting platforms. So there's a couple different options here. There's Zoom. Zoom is obviously great. We're all familiar with it. Zoom does have live streaming capabilities. A lot of people don't know that. You can actually take a Zoom meeting and you can broadcast it to, I think, Facebook or YouTube. I don't think that they have simultaneous casting. It's important to note that, okay? The platform that I recommend using is StreamYard, okay? And that's what I'm doing right now. If folks want to check out StreamYard, we actually have a link for it, which I think affords some sort of a discount. This is our little referral link. It's dubb.com/StreamYard. So to click on that, if you're interested, you can kind of get a free trial, I think. And I think what's really interesting about it is that it allows us to schedule a live video, and let's just get into some screen sharing here. It allows us to schedule a live video and then broadcast it to simultaneous social platforms. So this is the exact live video that you and I are in right now. This is a little bit meta, actually, because we're in the Dubb Facebook page. It's live streamed over there. It's also the Dubb Facebook group, the Dubb support YouTube channel, Periscope, owned by Twitter, which actually appears on Twitter, and then Twitch, which is not very relevant. It's mostly for gaming, but we just kind of use it just because why not? So this video, as we speak, is being streamed to all these platforms. Now you might ask, well, why do you decide to stream your podcasts A in video and B live? And the answer to that question is because I might call it forced accountability. When you record a video and you download it, it needs to go through an editing process, a distribution process, an upload process. The reason why you might not be going live is because you don't know if there's going to be a mistake, if there's going to be a flub, if a dog is going to enter the frame, if a kid is going to come crying, and it's going to mess up your live stream, right? In which case, you got to do editing and you got to fix it, you got to repair it, you got to put Band-Aids on it. Now, yes, it's safer to do a private recorded session, edit if you need to, and then upload it. But it requires so much more time, and the delay that inevitably happens makes your podcast not as much of a live experience. So that's why I prefer to live. I have recorded conversations that I did a week ago or 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, which are still going through the editing process because there's other priorities that just have not made that possible. In this case, I always know I can go to YouTube, I can go to Facebook, I can go to Twitter, and I'm going to have a link that I can share with the person right afterwards. So in about 10 or so minutes, when we wrap up this video, I'm going to share with you this recording. It wasn't perfect. I made some mistakes. There was a couple of ums and delays, but at its core, you're going to have a pretty usable video, and I'm pretty psyched about that.
You make some great points there. I mean, the risk and reward, to me, there's little risk and a lot of reward to do it this way, to live stream it. I mean, the only risk is, like you said, there's a flub or a kid walks in or dogs barking. So what? I think it even adds an element of just a genuine, more kind of raw delivery of the information. It makes people feel like, oh, these are just normal guys talking about something that's important to me, versus it seeming so primed and polished. I think that's a big value add.
I love it. You know, when my kids enter the frame in a podcast, in the beginning it was a little awkward for me, but now it's fun. I take my headphones off, I include him or her in the process. It becomes a fun thing. Chances are, if it's a business convo, it's nuked, it's done. But at that point, what's more important, the business convo or family? At that point, why would I want to reject my kids? That's a whole other convo, which I won't get into here.
Yeah, we could talk for quite a bit of time on that.
Yeah.
So.
That's also damaging. So, in this case, you just got to be comfortable with it. It just takes time. You know, the great saying, it's only as awkward as you make it. It's so relevant for this. If you feel shame and embarrassed and terrified, the person's going to feel that. Yeah. And they're going to, it's not what's happening that's going to, I mean, barring some egregious things like a naked family member coming on the frame or something like that, you know, it's only going to be embarrassing in the way that you react to it. Another great saying is business and you know, living is not what happens to us, but it's how we respond to things. And again, this is a whole nother conversation. But the point that I'm making is distribute quickly, because you don't want to get this stuff stuck on your hard drive.
Yeah. And two, might prevent you from ever sharing it. Like if you have too much time in between, you might start to overanalyze and rethink it. I think it's best just to let it go to the world.
Yeah. You know, once again, a shout out to Naomi. Another benefit of doing live is that as you start to build your audience, I can see that there's live viewers in this video right now. It's really exciting. I can see engagement. People are liking, comments. I can see that. It's real-time validation. Now I have a choice. Do I incorporate them into the convo? Do I say, "Hi Naomi, thank you so much for joining us. Gratitude." Do I do that, or do I not do that? It's really your choice. Sometimes you don't want to include comments because it strays from a stream, but sometimes you do because it's just real-time information. That said, what's up, Naomi? Thank you. Let's keep moving here. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions, any comments before I move to the next bit?
No, I think you're doing a great job thus far.
Cool.
Let's keep it going.
All right, cool. So now let's get into, recording, right? So now we have the person. We're in Zoom, we're in StreamYard, we're in some other recording platform, and we're actually going through the process. So I think since this huge microphone is staring right at me, I'm just going to get into this right now. I'm going to start with the tech, okay? So the first thing is that what I have here in front of me is the Yeti Blue microphone, which is the larger one. This one is actually designed to have 2 microphones, so I can put it to the 2-person setting, or I can put it to the 1-person setting. Okay, this is not a hypercardioid mic. It's not one of those where you keep it really close to your face, where you get that ASMR, that really crisp voice. This requires a little bit of distance, right? It's just I don't want it to be too kind of in my face. It's a choice. If some people like that sound, that Howard Stern sound, where you can literally hear the crisping in the mouth, you want to get it. Yeah, you want to get the one of the Shures or one of the Audio Technicas, one of those. So, I really like this mic. Just make sure you monitor your levels and don't keep it too high. The webcam that I have this is a Logitech HD 1080p webcam. What I love about my setup on my webcam is not necessarily the camera, but it's actually the gyroscoping arm. This is my favorite thing about this, because if I want to change my flow, if I want to stand up, I can stand up. If I want to move around a little bit, show off my guitars, I can do that. If I want to be dynamic, I can do that. Whereas if you're using the webcam on your laptop, you're kind of stuck to it. Now you can go like this or go like this, but that's limiting. It's limiting. So I really like this dynamic. You can move, if you want to move.
Is the one you have that you're talking about wireless, or does it have to be plugged in via USB?
I'm living in a non-wireless world. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Nothing is wireless in this setup. The podcast has a USB mic. The webcam has a USB a plug, I should say. In fact, my internet is not even wireless. I'm not using the Wi-Fi right now. I'm actually using the Mac FireWire to Ethernet cable. That's Cat6 cable that connects directly into my my modem.
Okay.
And the reason why I do that is because Wi-Fi is not perfect.
Yeah.
I can turn it on if I want, but I actually, on my MacBook Pro, I can see the icon right now. Wi-Fi is actually off. So I feel more comfortable like this. There's less interruptions. So if someone doesn't have the ability to do that, it's fine. But you will learn at some point that being wired on everything is better. Batteries die, Wi-Fi disconnects, tech.
Yeah.
Even with wired situation, there's failures too, and you just have to navigate around that. I'll do a quick breakout and say in the 170 recordings that I've done, 170 podcast recordings, and probably now 300 live, maybe 400 live videos. I've only had a full tech breakdown, I think twice. And one of them was, I think, because my computer was overheating. It was a really hot day and I didn't have the AC going. And then the second reason as I think there was a Wi-Fi failure. I don't actually do this, but I probably should, is in the beginning of the call to say, listen, if something tanks here, either end and just leave or just talk for 5 minutes until I reboot my computer and I fix the situation. Do what you need to do, basically. So it's kind of a caveat thing to do, but I would say that it's happened. It's happened to be 1%. So it's an outlier situation. Maybe it's not even worth mentioning. So we talked about StreamYard. We talked about best practices. We talked about technology. I can't stress enough how important it is to navigate around real life. If there's an interruption, if you lose your thought, if something disrupts the situation, you have to make that part of the script. You have to make that part of the story. If you don't, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel a certain amount of anxiety. For example, right now, I'm feeling really hot. Like I've got my sweater on. I've got this layer. I'm just going to take a moment to shut my heater off and just make myself a little bit more comfortable. Because if I don't, then I'm just going to feel stress.
Yeah. It's going to divert your attention and you'll be fragmented.
Yeah, and I'd rather you know that I'm a human being that has feelings.
It seems like an obvious thing to want to do, but we're all like conditioned to be like, if they actually know what's really going on or who I am, this is going to be a disaster. But it won't. Quite the
Right,
opposite, I think.
right. There's this idea of brutal honesty that liberates us. If we're brutally honest about the things that we're going through, about what we're feeling a little bit shy about, of our concerns, maybe if we had a bad day, just mention that in the morning. This pool man's here is really making a lot of noise. I don't know what's going on there. At least you set that up so that the expectation is set. You can do that before the recording starts. If you want to make it part of the script, you can do that during the recording. But whatever kind of issues that you might be dealing with or external factors, I think it's just good to maybe mention those before you click the live button, before you click the record button, so that you don't feel the anxiety inside of you. Just let it off, let it out of your chest.
Yeah.
Let's move to I think in terms of etiquette, I think timing is another thing. Respecting time. This video has gone on for 31 minutes. I think when I pitched this to you, I think I said approximately 30 minutes. So I know in my mind that you probably have a meeting in the next 10 minutes, and also that I just need to respect a matter of time. People, your viewers like a consistency. Podcasts that are 30 minutes, give or take. Those are effective. If you're like Joe Rogan and if you could actually do it, do the marathon and go 2 hours. Not recommended in the beginning. But time is another really important etiquette point.
Getting started, what would you say is the sweet spot for time? Like 15 minutes, 30 minutes in your experience listening to other people?
I think 15 minutes is the short version. 25 minutes is appropriate. And the reason why I think 25 minutes is good is because what you do at the 25-minute mark is that you allow the person to share their world. This is so critically important. If you notice in that form, I have their LinkedIn URL, I have their website address, I have their Twitter name. I always, 100% of the time at the end, 95% in, I always say, thank you so much. Please, folks, check out Dustin's website, check out Dustin's LinkedIn account, check out this new podcast that Dustin's starting up. I promote the person. That is the give. You got to give. This is all about the giving. It is in giving that we receive. So critical here. So to make sure that you promote the person's effort, if they have something that they want to promote, take that last 5 minutes to do them. Ask them about the book that they wrote. Ask them about the speaking engagement that they just had. Ask them about this new website that they just launched, and let them promote it. It's so important.
It's all good information.
Yeah.
Very good.
And then to kind of wrap up here, I'll close out on the distribution of it. So now, we've recorded the video in Zoom private. We've done a StreamYard live. Now what we have is the social links, right? So we've got a YouTube link, we've got a Facebook link. Those already exist out on social platforms. If I go to our Dubb Connection Loop YouTube account, I can see that this video is already there. In fact, if I click on it right now, it'll be awkward because it'll be approximately 1 minute before it back in time. So it'll be like looking in the past. It'll be kind of funny. It's like kind of meta. But those are already existing. So what you can do is immediately share those links with the guest, because it's an immediate real-time thing. It's top of mind for them. They're excited to get this content out there. They want to watch it. They want to share it. It's powerful to be able to share that. But also is the next thing, which I think this is the most important part of a business podcast, or for that matter, in my opinion, any podcast. Okay, it's the micro content. We call it the waterfall method. Okay, the waterfall method means that you start with a long form piece of content, a podcast recording, a webinar recording, and then you cut it into shorter bits of information. What we do is we have an editor. His name is Bono, in fact. And what Bono does is he listens to this whole recording here, and he finds 3 to 6 micro clips, the punchiest clips, the best possible clips that people have to hear. Okay. And he cuts those, he trims those for massive brevity. He'll take a 2-minute clip and cut it to 60 seconds. He'll put a a micro content, like a title on it, and I actually have a visual for this. So this is what actually one of those micro contents look like. This was a 30 to 45-minute podcast that I had with Tony, and this was created in Adobe. There's all sorts of great programs for this. Capwing has something, Wave.video has something, InVideo has something, or what we did is we actually custom built this using Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects. But what this allows us to do, it allows us to put the title text here, to burn in the captions here, and then to put our branding here. Dubb logo, title of the podcast. That way when someone watches this, 1 minute, 5-second video, they can have the audio off. They can watch it for 3 seconds and see the Dubb logo. There's so many things that can happen here. What we also have here is we have a custom thumbnail, which I don't think I can show right now, but before this video gets uploaded, we have a really nice image that we use to kind of promote this. It's not the beginning of the video. It's a nice produced graphic, which maybe we'll display in a minute. The other thing that I want to say, just as a little breakout moment here, is this idea of, here's, by the way, the graphic image that we create. It just showed it for a second, and then the video audio played. So hopefully you caught that. Yeah. But what I think is really important here is, as you notice, what I'm doing is I'm navigating between a couple of different channels here. I'm doing my screen, I'm going back to my webcam. Every time I break out into a different session, I find myself knowing that there's a little break in the conversation. That is where we use filler words. Basically you stutter, there's a little break, there's an awkward break. I think it's really important to move away from that, to know that it's okay to take a breath. It's okay to just pause and breathe. Now, I must say this, Dustin, that you are the absolute last person I should be telling this to, because I don't think you do any of that. I think that you've probably gone through some special training. But for the most of us,
I give full credit to my wife. If you would have met me 5 years ago, I'm always like wanting to add things in, use too many adjectives, talk over people. And she's like, you need to slow down and listen and pay attention and be aware.
Right. So important. It's so important. Yeah. I just took a sip of my beverage. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people think that that's Cheers. Awkward to do that. Yeah. Cheers. So I think it's important to just make yourself comfortable. If you feel thirsty, if you need to hydrate yourself, because 5 minutes later, it's going to be a lot worse. Okay. So what we do for micro content is that we take that long form, we cut it into micro clips. We use rev.com to generate the captions of it. So what someone does at rev.com is, it's a human being that they listen to the clip, they put the text in, they send it to us, and then we can upload it so that we have a totally shareable piece of content. When we share that content, we always mention the person, and this is where the magic happens. The magic is that if you're engaging and if you have guests on your podcast that have influence, that have followers, they're organically going to want to share that clip with folks in their audience. And if folks listen to 30 seconds, 60 seconds of that video clip, LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever it is, it's going to say people like this content. Let's promote this. Let's actually get more visibility of this piece of content. And it's going to be the inherent marketing for your podcast. That is the best way to initially market your podcast. It's to get the micro content and get the folks that you're engaging with to share it. And also get your viewers, get your followers, get the people that support you to share that.
So a quick question, if I may. So the micro content, from what I'm hearing and even my own personal experience, it's what grabs your attention initially and gets that initial buy-in, especially if you're a new podcaster and no one's ever heard of you. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a Bono at your disposal like you do, someone who's really talented at being able to listen to a 2-5 minute clip and just pick out like what's really going to grab someone's attention, what keywords do you personally listen for, or like what have you really gravitated towards personally that you would recommend for micro content?
It's the hardest thing to do is to document where the awesome clips are that you can then go trim out for this type of asset. It's the hardest thing to do. I've tried multiple times to have a pad and paper in front of me and just jot down the times. I've tried to do that. The problem is the second that I take my attention off this and jot that down, I've broken the flow, right? And I've potentially taken, now maybe I'm not good at that.
So
Maybe I could do a better job at that. I'm inherently not a good handwriter and communicator. It's difficult for me to do that at the same time. I can type while doing it, so that's maybe an option. But I always recommend, to answer your question, to know where those moments are, so that you can go and mine them out. You know, you can say at approximately the 2 minute mark, we talked about this one thing, and that's the clip. We got to do it. You know,
I feel like I feel like that should be a button that you somehow integrate onto StreamYard. Like,
Yeah.
because like you're saying, you have to write it down. It takes 5 minutes or 5 seconds of mental focus and pulls you away. But if you simply click your mouse and be like, that was it, I got the chills, or that really resonated with me, this tap my micro content button so that we can easily go back.
You know, what I'll do right now to just practice what I preach, this is actually something that I do, is I'm just going to put a caption, and here's the delay. So I'm going to put a comment. You know, that took me a couple of seconds. So I just put a comment. You might see that, or maybe you won't. But in the live video, there's a comment that's going to appear that says 39-minute mark, how to mine micro content. So that's an option to do. I would say practice to see if that's something that you want to do, and you can figure out your own flow.
Okay.
You know, on top of that, just to conclude, there's a lot of additional marketing that you can do on. We use Anchor.fm to upload and to distribute the podcast. So you can definitely, you know, pay, and you can advertise it. You can sponsor your posts. Like if you put that micro content on Facebook or Twitter or, you know, YouTube or LinkedIn, you can use that as a sponsored post, pay money, target certain people so that they can listen to that. The final thing I'll say before we end this is that we recommend to not put the link to the podcast in the caption of the social, rather to put it in the comment, in a first comment. And the reason why that's the case is because the algorithms, they don't really favor posts where viewers get sent to third-party platforms. They'd rather keep that traffic in there. So the comment is, I think, a really healthy place to put that to start out with. Now you can go back afterwards, after a couple of days, and you can edit the post and you can add the link there, but you don't want the link to be in the initial post.
Okay.
Just because it's not going to get you as much visibility. So I'll end this here. If there's any questions, please let me know. Let's keep this conversation going. But that's what I got for you today.
For sure. It's been very helpful. Thank you, Ruben. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you.